One of the things that really drives me and fires me up is turning chaos into order. I like to help business owners become more profitable, and I do that by applying structure in both concept and process. And so we pay attention both to marketing and operations. And this morning I want to share some thoughts that come from my observations over the last 6 years of my work. I want to talk about a guiding principle that I've adopted, that marketing and operations are connected. Now, I don't want to give you a how-to presentation, but instead I want to ask you to think differently about marketing and how you define it. I'd like to suggest that this shift in perception will contribute to your business success. I want to start with a rhetorical question. How do you define marketing? Now, for some people, by the way they act, or maybe they would even tell you, well, marketing, that's our website and it's our brochures that are around here somewhere waiting to be given out. Well, I think that's a little bit short-sighted. A better answer would be something like, well, marketing is everything that it takes to fill our sales funnel. And I think that's a better definition. But I'd like to lift it one level higher and ask you to think a little bit differently. The American Marketing Association, they define marketing in this way as of July 2013. They say marketing is the activity, set of institutions, and processes for creating, communicating, delivering, and exchanging offerings that have value for customers, clients, partners, and society at large. And I say, whew, that's kind of a mouthful. So I'd like to provide my own definition of marketing. It's everything that's involved in successfully taking your product to market. It involves finding out what people want and then creating those goods and services to satisfy them and delivering them at a profit that's satisfying to you. So why is it important to think differently about marketing? Well, I've noticed this, and maybe you have too, that sometimes the catalyst to success is a shift in perception. I also like to say it this way. The way you view a thing determines how you treat it and the benefit that you derive from it. Let's use parents and children as an example, and maybe you've had this experience. At some point, maybe in the teen years, kids start treating their parents like they're just lame. They don't know anything. Any great advice you could give them is just shrugged off as useless. Well, then you fast forward a few years, and guess what? Voila! They get married, start having kids of their own, and wonder of all wonders, their parents become this great source of information and tips on children and family life. Well, so what's happened is that there's been that shift in perception, and certainly it doesn't happen that way in every family. But I think it does illustrate the idea that the way you think about a thing and the way you view a thing determines how you treat it and the benefit that you derive from it. Well, let's get more specific. How will our perception about marketing and the way we define it, how will that have an impact on our business? Well, here's how I see it. First, the idea of marketing is rightly connected to the idea of more leads and more revenue. But I think we know that more leads don't always mean more revenue. I think we also know that more revenue doesn't always mean more profit. For example, if you don't get the right kind of leads, or if you can't convert those leads to sales, your marketing time, effort, and budget might be wasted. And if you do convert those leads to sales, but your business machine is inefficient, or if you can't meet demand, you might have some trouble and your profits might actually suffer. So here's the point that I'm trying to make, and why it's important to view marketing and operations as being connected. When you take a more holistic view toward this thing that we call marketing, it changes the way you think and act. It changes the way you prioritize, it changes the way you make decisions, and it changes the way you allocate resources. Let me give you an example. In my work with a law firm, the question came up while they were working through this transition. The question came up, how can we make sure that our revenue levels stay healthy? And so I made a comment that went something like this. Well, if you want to attract more leads, that's one thing. If you want to close a higher percentage of sales, well, that's another. But I'd like to think that at this point in our transition. I'd like to think that at this point, our goal should be to make sure that we're satisfying people in the sales process to the degree that they're more likely to buy, and to the degree that they're more likely to refer others who will come as well. Let's make sure that customers are satisfied before we try to increase volume. So instead of spending more money to get more leads, what we did was we set our attention on some operational changes. And those changes resulted in a better customer experience that led to those healthy revenue numbers we were looking for. So I'm emphasizing the idea that marketing and operations are connected. Well, I'd like to dig into that a little bit deeper and see it through the ideas of touch points, culture, and cross-functional teams. Well, let me first share what I mean by touch points. Touch points, I'm referring to everything, every point of contact that you have with your customers. We have to understand that people often make buying decisions for reasons that have little or nothing to do with your product, your pricing, or the features of your product. There are several other factors that cause people to buy. We also need to understand that with every point of contact, impressions are either being formed, reinforced, or modified. And it's happening either in the positive column or in the negative column. So think of every different touch point with customers. Think of the entire customer experience before, during, and after their purchase. And think about all the different related points of contact. It happens with advertising. It happens with the sales process, with customer service, with the product itself and its features. Even billing and packaging can have an influence. Let me give you an example. Now, some of my friends know that I'm a fan of fountain pens. As a matter of fact, I use almost nothing but fountain pens to write. I've got a nice little collection of them. A couple years ago, I started paying attention to a company called the Goulet Pen Company. And I started watching their videos on YouTube. And they have reviews on pens and different kinds of ink and that kind of thing. And they've become a trusted source of information for me. Although I love buying on Amazon, I decided to give a try to the folks at the Goulet Pen Company. And here's what I found. I bought this pen right here. Got this nice little fountain pen. And when it arrived, they did a great job with their packaging. They did a great job packaging it when it arrived. And I noticed that the pen's original box was bubble wrapped in a great package. And there was something in the package that I really didn't expect. A lollipop. So they threw this here. So they threw a lollipop in the package, and there was a nice handwritten note that said, "We hope you noticed the way that we packaged your item, and we hope you like it. Please give us some feedback." It was a handwritten note. So I was happy to provide that feedback, and I certainly enjoyed that personal care that they took, and yes, I enjoyed the lollipop. Well, in case you haven't figured it out, I now feel a closer connection with this company called the Goulet Pen Company. And because of my experience, it's more likely that I'll make another purchase from them. Well, let me break that down into some of the touch points. I found out about them and became attracted to them through YouTube. That's one touch point. Later, I went to their website, another touch point. I liked their Facebook page, eventually signed up for their email campaigns, and those were all different touch points and check marks in the positive column. Now, at one point, they updated their website. But for a little while, it was broken. I couldn't see some of the products. However, because of their other touch points and the other positive interactions I've had with them, there was enough relational equity there that I decided to stick with them. And so I got an email one day talking about a new pen that was being released. And so I went ahead and went to their website, and I was able to buy that pen without any problems. The packaging was great, as I described. It was even fun. And they made it easy to provide that valuable feedback. So can you see all those different touch points along the way? And can you see how marketing and operations are connected throughout? Can you think of touch points that influence you? What about the great boxes that the iPhones come in? And what about the way that people answer the phone when you call? Or what about when they greet you at the door? There's a Tex-Mex restaurant called Moe's. I don't know if you've ever been to Moe's, but when you walk in the door at Moe's, what happens? Welcome to Moe's! The whole staff cries with great enthusiasm. Well, guess what? That takes training. That's an operational thing. But it's a point of contact, and it really kind of creates a unique and attractive experience. And if you've ever test driven a BMW, you might notice some of the interesting sounds and musical tones that are associated with it, like when the key is in the ignition and the door is open. They actually have a guy that spends tons of time refining exactly what those musical tones are like. Those are just more examples of the way that marketing and operations are connected. Let's talk about cross-functional teams and culture. What do I mean by a cross-functional team? Well, I'm simply referring to this idea. Your marketing department might be a lone individual, a group, or several groups. People outside the actual marketing department have a lot to contribute to the overall marketing effort as we're defining it today. Well, why do people outside the marketing department matter? Well, why would I even think about building a cross-functional team? Well, think of 3 reasons: vision, collaboration, and buy-in. Let me elaborate briefly. Let's start with vision. Now, vision can mean a lot of different things. The first thing I mean is this: sometimes people can see things that others can't. Maybe they notice an opportunity to improve something or even to make something new. Someone else, somebody in a different department, might see something that we can't simply because we're too close to it. We're so tied up in the details of our work that it's hard to see new things sometimes. I once had a business owner tell me that they have a shop manager, a shop foreman, that actually does a better job of making Google ads than their marketing person. Well, that can be a little bit embarrassing for the marketing person, but sometimes you have to let stuff like that happen. People also see things differently because of their role. Staff members who have direct contact with customers are your best eyes and ears, and so they can give you the feedback, valuable feedback for marketing purposes. People who are producing goods and services also might see better ways of producing products or maybe even new product lines. So people in different departments see things differently, and they have a different piece of the puzzle to contribute. Let's take a side journey just for a minute and talk about culture. Chris Torbett talked about culture last month and everybody being on the same page and having clarity of vision and defined values. And I really love what you shared, Chris, last month. And includes everybody, employees, customers, vendors. And today I want to talk about culture in a little bit different way. When you foster a culture that understands touch points, values customer satisfaction, and embraces the free exchange of ideas, you're far more likely to come up with ideas like that lollipop with the Goulet Pen Company. It's also more likely that other team members will cooperate and help you execute well on those ideas. So vision or insight is one reason to build a cross-functional team. And then there's collaboration. It's simply a logical next step. If people outside the marketing department have something valuable to contribute, it stands to reason that you want to create a way to constructively share, validate, and execute on those ideas. And then buy-in is the logical result of that collaboration. When people see the big picture and they know they're contributing something of value, they're more engaged and more productive and more profitable. And I think these ideas can be tied up by something that David Acker says in his book. David Acker is a branding guru, and he says this: the brand will only deliver on the brand promise if the employees believe and live the brand in all the customer touch points. The need is thus to build the brand internally as well as externally. So can you see now what I mean by the idea that marketing and operations are connected? So what questions do you have about that? And for those who ask a question, I have a bribe.
Let me see that quote again.
Sure. Oops. Yeah, so he says, the brand will only deliver on the brand promise if the employees believe and live the brand in all the customer touch points. So I think one question that could be asked is, say you're a solopreneur, you have a very small company, and you don't have a staff to build a cross-functional team. Well, you may not have a staff of employees, but you you probably have, or you should have, people around you that you're outsourcing to. Why not bring them to the table? Why not make them part of the conversation and get them to understand touch points and get them on board with what you're doing? Any questions about that? Dale?
I have a question about
Here you go.
the brand.
Whoops, bad throw. So the question was, what percentage of the time do companies actually have a clear brand promise? In my experience, it's very, very few. I don't know how to measure the percentage. But being intentional about the brand and what that means, I don't think is something that happens very often in the world of small business. And I think even beyond that, Bill, we had this conversation yesterday. You can have a brand promise, but living up to it is a whole different story. So a lot of times people have something on the wall, so well, this is our mission statement, or these are our values. Well, it's probably more important to live it out than it is to have it on the wall. But to your question, I don't think that people think about their brand, and I don't think people are very intentional about that in the small business world. Any other questions? So I think, Bill?
Those dots better.
So the question is that a lot of times touch points seem to be random, and how do we connect the dots, and how do we put some structure to it? Is that what you're asking? I think one good way of doing it is to think about all the different departments and all the different ways that people have contact. So one way to do it is if you have, say, your sales department, your marketing department, you've got customer service. So think about all those different departments. And the people who are in charge of those departments, get them to come up with the list of what all those touch points are. And then begin to make them responsible for doing a good job with those touch points. So that means writing into your customer satisfaction surveys. It means getting feedback at different points. But it does mean becoming intentional and becoming more structured throughout the organization.
Thank you.
Oh, here's your lollipop.
Thank you. Yeah.
Anyone else?
There might be. They're afraid you're going to throw something at them.
Yeah. There's a question back there. Sure. Well, are you talking about touch points or?
Yes.
Okay. So sit down. So the question is, what if you're so small, you don't have a marketing budget? Maybe you're a solopreneur. Is that right? Okay. So what you would do is sit down and write down all the different ways in which people have contact with you, and it could even relate to from the first conversation to the last conversation and throughout. And then what you can do is start thinking about how can I improve those, and on which of those items can I logically get feedback from people. So for example, one thing you could do is if you're having an initial conversation with somebody, ask them, did we talk about the things you want to talk about? Is there anything left uncovered, or would you like me to take a different approach? So those are just some possible ideas. Well, I'd like to finish with some very brief comments. It'll probably help your business to see the connection between marketing and operations. It'll also help you to develop some kind of a cross-functional team. And that team should be aware of your company touch points, help you create them, and help you make them better. And this, in my view, is part of the puzzle of your business success. Well, I hope that helps you. Thank you.